Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for having me. My name is Appelqvist. My day job is as a chief consultant at the City of Copenhagen in Denmark in the Waste and Resource Management Department. But I also have a double role as chair of the scientific committee of ISWA. So, thank you for having me again. And apologies, but my Greek is much worse than my English, so I will continue in English. My wife doesn't think I speak Danish good enough either, so pretty much. Okay, just one promotion, and that's only. ISWA is the International Solid Waste Association. It works to promote professional sustainable waste and resource management worldwide. The good thing, it is an organization that's open for everybody that has money and time. So yes, please just become members. It's a great organization, a great network. Thank you. Great. Yeah. I used to play a little bit with Eurostat data when I do look at presentations, and yeah, in this case we can see that Denmark and Greece are quite different points, of course. So the question is, why should I talk here? And that's a good question in a way, right? But I hope there are some reflections on some of the learnings that we have done that could be food for thoughts for you. And of course, I'm also very eager to hear your reflections and your ideas and your feedback to us in Denmark. I will also say my presentation will be a little bit fussy when it comes to what we'll look into, because I will start with some data on and information on a Danish level in general, and then I will use the City of Copenhagen as case for most of my presentation. Good. Someone talked about financial incentives, and if you want one proof for it working, it's actually what was done in Denmark in the 1990s when we introduced the landfill tax. At that time, at approximately 20 euros per ton, today up to 400 to approximately 3 times that, and 64 euros per ton. So every ton that runs into landfill in Denmark pays a landfill tax on top of the actual fee, gate fee on the landfills. And as you see, between 1998 and 1992, there is a huge drop in landfilling in Denmark. So did it went to the right places? Yes, in the long run, most probably. Of course, there are things happening in the transition period, but in general, the introduction on the landfill fee, landfill tax was very much a driving force in Denmark to go divert waste from landfill and going into more recycling. A lot of PPPs were established at that point with municipal companies working together with private companies to build the recycling capacities that was needed, because there was a drive and there was an incentive in the landfill tax. So that's on an overall level. This is also, of course, there is a part of this section before 1998 as well, because of course there happened things there. Because in Copenhagen in the 1950s, all waste were driven to a dump site close to the city. And then gradually over the 70s and 80s, the system in Copenhagen and Denmark changed into more waste to energy and more recycling, driven basically by 2 or 3 things. First, lack of space in the cities that actually were made too much space taken up and hampering economic activities. 2, the oil crisis, where we have energy problems, that also was a catalyst for waste to energy. And 3, awakening of an environmental agenda with the first environmental regulation in Denmark in 1973. And then working onwards from there to the start of the 80s, 90s, when it comes to the waste regulation. So those 3 drivers that we as a waste management sector didn't decide on was of course very much a driver of how things changed. Good. just very shortly, division of responsibilities in Denmark when it comes to waste management. National, of course, regulation, data collection on an overall level, the registers for actors, national waste management plan, and lately permitting and inspection of some plants and landfills, as well as inspection of waste producers and classification of waste has been changed from the local authorities to the national authorities. We don't know where it's going to end at the moment, but that's how it looks like. Municipalities are responsible for waste and resource management planning locally, the local regulation of waste, all collection of municipal solid waste, and collection from waste from smaller enterprises that use the municipal system. And we also are the appointed owners of incineration plants and landfills. In many cases in Denmark, that ownership is built through intermunicipal companies where a couple of municipalities work together. Copenhagen is co-owner of 2 incineration plants close to Copenhagen, one where they own together with 4 other municipalities, the other with 18 municipalities in our region. So that's the setup we have. We can also say one of those intermunicipal companies is also the one taking care of the operations of collecting waste, municipal solid waste from the city of Copenhagen. But it is the municipality that designs the schemes and follows up on the performance. New in Denmark is that for the 3 last years, there has been liberalization, I would say, of waste incineration, meaning that all waste incineration plants has to be put in a separate company. That company still has to be publicly owned. So it's not privatization at this point, but it's a liberalization, and that the municipalities have to tender for waste treatment and at incineration plants, also if they are owned by intermunicipal companies. So basically, even if you fulfill the in-house criteria in accordance with EU regulation, you still have to tender waste incineration treatment. And then, as I guess one of the last countries in the European Union, we're implementing an EPR scheme for packaging waste. Collection by municipalities, treatment of most of the fractions that are mostly packaging, paid by the treatment, by the producers. We still collect waste based on materials, so we have packaging waste and non-packaging waste in the same containers, in the same collection system. And what we are doing right now in the havoc after the implementation is discussing who's going to pay what, with a pressure on what is necessary cost. The producers are supposed to pay the necessary cost, and apparently they think the cost that the municipality have is too high and not necessary. So the fight is on, and we don't really know where we're going to land. But of course, it is a systemic change here as well that we have to use ourselves to. Good. Very, very shortly, Copenhagen is the city capital, Denmark. It has around 700,000 inhabitants. 92% of our households are in apartment buildings, which pretty much defines how we work with waste. Also, we can say approximately 1/3 to maybe up to 40% of the households in Copenhagen has a car. The rest hasn't. We have a lot of single-family, single-person households. We have a lot of students. We have a lot of single persons in the city. And all of this sets the scenes for how we have to work with waste. Also, it's a small city. It's a 90 square kilometer large city. So it's quite densely populated, and that's also what it indicated by having so many apartment buildings in the city, so to speak. Good. So I said I will do some successes in this one. I think the first success is actually that the citizens in Denmark rate environment and climate very high. This is a poll by a Danish poll company that asked what are the most important issues, and environmental and climate is actually on the top, together with health hospitals. So that, of course, is very helpful for us. So there is a support from citizens that acknowledging that environmental and climate agenda is important. I will also say that on a municipal level, there is a large support, political support for an environmental and climate agenda in Copenhagen. The Waste and Resource Management Plan, as well as the Climate Plan, has been unanimously approved by the City Council, and that also makes strengthens our license to operate, together with the support from the citizens to do so. And how are we doing? This is this is City of Copenhagen data. So green collected for recycling and blue real recycling on municipal waste as calculated in the according to the Waste Directive. So yes, we are. If you look at the 2025 data, which is last I had, we are almost collecting as much waste for recycling that we do for in the residual waste bin. So that's a kind of celebrating point there at the moment. And we also can see we have also rising numbers on our real recycling over time, which is nice. So that's also a success. How do we do that? Yeah, as I said, densely populated city, not that many cars, source separation is key, and has been the religion we have been swearing to in Copenhagen. So at the bottom you see those are the fractions we collect on weekly or bi-week, well, based on bin collection in the city, which is quite a few fractions. And just to make it even worse or better, we also have other collections that we do by calls or having close to the citizens on bulky waste, clean wood, hazardous waste, large textiles and garden waste. So yes, we collect a lot of things from our citizens. It's also one of the pillars of our citizen engagement is make waste management available and tell people clearly what they have to do to handle the system, so to speak. And this is, from our view, what we see, how we implement making the waste management structure available to our citizens. Does it come with a cost? Yes, it does. It costs us around 88 million euros a year to collect and treat the waste in Copenhagen. As you see, out of that, the collection cost is approximately 90%. So basically, only 10% is of the total cost is on the treatment side, which also is something that we use as Ford for Ford, saying, well, of course, when we look into treatment contracts, they look very expensive. The price per ton are expensive. But at the end of the day, if you're throwing 80 million euros a year on collecting things, it also makes sense to invest in making sure that waste is handled in the best way possible. Good. Yeah, and this is, I will also say, this is clear, just operational data. So this is the budget line for collection and the budget line for treatment. All other the kind of administrative cost, what comes on top of that is not in here. So take it with a grain of salt, so to speak. Also kind of, because it's very often discussed in international fora, you talk about how much of an annual disposable household cost does a waste-free constitute. And if you look at this constitutes approximately 0.3%. And I don't use that number. Let's do in a little bit more detail. We can see this is how we have decided the waste-free in Copenhagen. We have two fixed elements. There's an administrative fee, 11 euros per year, approximately. And then we have a waste scheme fee, that is all the cost for putting all the fractions and all the collections, excluding the residual waste handling, under a fixed fee. So it doesn't cost you more, at least not in a running year, to sort more waste out and use more of your recycling bins. But on the residual waste fee, we have a variable cost. It's a pay-as-you-throw system, but it's not weight-based, but based on what kind of volume, how much weekly volume for residual waste are we putting into to the use of the citizens. Yes, it's cost-covered based, so we are not, it should rest in itself over time. It is a ring-fenced system. The money that goes into our waste management fee system is not negotiable and cannot be transferred out of the system. It's not a part of a budget negotiations, yearly budget negotiations. But of course, the politicians can decide what kind of development pace do we want to work on. So you can decide on next ambition, but the cost and the operational cost, what's in there, has to be collected by this ring-fest system. And we invoice everything over to the property owner. It also is a kind of interesting thing because most of our citizens do not know how much they pay for the waste, which we are looking into in financial incentives as well. But when we have a collective collection of waste fees on property level, it's quite interesting to see how far can we go with financial incentives on the citizen level, so to speak. Yeah. The trick here is that the waste fee, since the waste fee is isolated and not based working in a tax system, we have some problematic phases when it comes to reuse and waste minimization that are not considered to be part of waste management, but the higher level of a hierarchy, and are therefore not being allowed to a total level to be financed through the waste fee. So where we have a tax-financed system for reuse, repair, and all of those kind of activities, well, it's outside the waste fee. So we have to work with both systems at the same time, although we, of course, get positive effects of waste reduction in the waste management system. Good. Okay, so on top of the challenges, this is the targets for a 2030 waste and resource strategy for Copenhagen. Main targets, well, we have a reuse target and we have some special targets for commercial waste recycling based on information campaigns and inspections, and a special focus on construction waste on total tons. But we also have a 60% actual recycling of household waste target. So while celebrating that we collect 50% of our waste for recycling today, and we have a 40% real recycling rate on that material, we still lack 20% for the next 4 years to come. This is also actually, this number is also a reuse in itself, because this is the same actual recycling target we had for our previous waste management plan, but we didn't reach at that point. So we have reused the target and say, well, let's go for it until 2030. And how do we do that, and what can we do? Well, I don't know. I think this is quite symptomatic. But if we look at the recycling potential and our residual waste in general, if you look at it very, very sharply, only 16% of what's in the residual waste bin is actually supposed to be there. There's 84% of the waste in a residual waste bin that actually could be recycled or utilized in other ways. But as you see on your right side, we also have looked at the sorting efficiency. When we're talking about sorting efficiency, is how much of the waste available does the citizen actually put in the right bins. Quite nice figures for glass, garden waste and cardboard. Those are also the fractions and schemes we introduced in the late 80s and in the 90s. So it's a 40-year period to reach that kind of maturity. If you look at, for example, plastics and food waste further down, as well as food and beverage cartons, that are some of the newest fractions we are introducing. The sorting efficiency is much lower. For some of them, it could be that there are more tricky fractions and hard to distinguish what is what, but there is also time perspective here and getting used to work with your schemes in a good way. So hopefully time works with us, but it also says a little bit about the time frame, the planning frame, and the long fight we have to put through here. And we also see, as I guess is also is quite symptomatic, we see a plateauing of your fractions when you introduce collection systems. Food waste was actually introduced quite late in Copenhagen. But now we collect food waste from all households and utilize this for anaerobic digestion, for biogas production, as well as fertilizer. But as you see, of course, you have a little steep rise in the implementation period, but then things plateau comes up on an even level, and from there you need to do more incentives and more campaigns to get the collection to get higher. As you saw, only a third of the food waste is collected today, so there's a huge potential, and food waste is 37% of what still is in the waste bin. So that's one of the fractions that we definitely need to pursue and look into how we can work more with. I guess we have things we can learn from other countries that have food waste collection much longer, and finding out how we can enhance that number as well. Yes, and the opposite of this of a recycling rate, of course, is also a reduction of residual waste incineration. If we look at the target, we should actually go down to 55 per 1,000 tons a year on residual household waste per year in 2030, which is half of what was going to incineration in 2019. So that's also a large change in the system. It's also a change that affects the energy system in Copenhagen, since waste energy is an integrated part in our district heating system, which also faces other challenges with more electrification and other aspects as well. So there are something that we also have to look into. How does the waste incineration fits into the waste management system of the future, but also how does it fit into the energy system of the future in Copenhagen? So, as I said, there's 20% real recycling more to gain to reach our targets. It's going to be a hard battle, but what do we look into? Well, I think we can say we look into these 4 schemes. A lot of behavioral change, more nudging, optimizing our system both on the system level and design, and looking into are there more financial incentives that also can be put in place. We look at new waste fractions, and as you see, we don't do the large paper food waste. It's down to the small ones now because we're getting close, and it's many small batters rather than one big at this time. So diapers and mattresses are fractions that actually have a quite good potential in Copenhagen, and there are a lot of them, and some of them, especially for diapers, are actually pretty much handled in a separate system all the way down to the waste bin today. So it's a system that could be interesting to look into. We are in dialogue with treatment companies on mattresses, and we have a contract with a contractor that is building a diaper recycling plant in the vicinity of Copenhagen as we speak, that is hopefully up and running for next year. Reuse, we will have to look more into reuse and accelerating that. Of course, once again, the smaller the rest potential on the large fractions are, the more small fractions we have go to for recycling, the more attractive also financially for us is the reuse and prevention initiatives cost-wise, being the cost gap between the two is narrowing over time. So it's exchange cases. We look at bicycles, paint. We have a reuse truck that goes around when people move out of buildings or clearing out houses. There are a lot of reusable things there as well. And then we looked at what waste sorting. Are there more we can do? After sorting of residual waste, where we are building an after sorting plant close to our incineration plant, not to skip source separation, but see if we can get even more material out of there. Fines from biological bio-waste is one of the fractions that is very interesting to look into there as well. And then, for example, looking at bulky waste sorting and see could we also maximize from those some of the things that we do. Yeah, and we'll have to do this in a world that doesn't really is what it used to be either. So there is definitely geopolitical flair to this as well, as we have seen with what happened with EU regulations in the last time, and what also where the political commitment and focus are. As the closer to Russia you live, I guess the clearer it is at the moment. So to try to conclude on this, I think what we see is, after having quite a long period of foreseeable things when it comes to waste management, I think uncertainty is a new given. We have a new geopolitical landscape which shifts faster, new regulations and strategy both on national level and a European level that change faster and in more unpredictable ways than we're used to. We see new organizational forms, new actors on the agenda, especially when it comes to producer responsibilities for our point in Denmark. But there are also a lot of companies that used to be old school producers that also engage more and more in the circular economy agenda. And we have new materials, products and market conditions, while also having really a lot of waste that is still hard to recycle. So I think we in Copenhagen, we definitely need to look into a basket of many and small initiatives rather than the large ones, because we have done a lot of those. We need to optimize our existing schemes, of course, and we must have to work very much more with waste reduction. And of course, we have waste incineration. That's the last resort, and hopeful further reduction of waste to incineration. And that could also be that this all together will most probably change the way we have to work for ourselves and together with others in the future as well. So, still exciting business to be in, still a great workplace. I love being in waste management, and I hope to stay so for many years more, because it's rewarding. It's the best way to know a city, and it also at least make my green heart to beat harder. So thank you for your attention, and thank you for having me.